On Wednesday, there was an insurrection on Capitol Hill by pro-Trump supporters for a series of so-called Stop the Steal marches. The riot was as a result of congressional votes being counted to certify the Electoral College results, giving Joe Biden the presidency. Pro-Trump supporters stormed the building and managed to breach the House of Congress. Police and security officers were overwhelmed by the scale of the attack and appeared unprepared for the onslaught that unfolded. Members of Congress were evacuated and were forced to shelter in secure locations. One woman was shot dead by security forces inside the building. 3 others died after what was described as medical emergencies. More than 6 hours after, the violence erupted after the harrowing assault on American democracy. The shaking Congress resumed their session and formally certified Democrat Joe Biden's election victory. 13 Republican senators and dozens of GOP representatives had planned to force debate and votes on perhaps 6 different state votes. The assault on the Capitol made some Republicans shy away from trying to overturn Biden's win, and challenges were lodged only against Arizona and Pennsylvania. Both efforts lost overwhelmingly. Biden defeated Trump by 306 to 232 electoral votes and will be inaugurated on January 20.
The whole number of electors appointed to vote for President of the United States is 538. Within that whole number, a majority is 270. The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of the state of Delaware has received 306 votes. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 232 votes. The whole number of electors appointed to vote for Vice President of the United States is 538. Within that whole number, a majority is 270. The votes for Vice President of the United States are as follows. Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 306 votes. Michael R. Pence of the state of Indiana has received 232 votes. The announcement of the state of the vote by the President of the Senate shall be deemed a sufficient declaration of the persons elected President and Vice President of the United States, each for the term beginning on the 20th day of January, 2021, and shall be entered together with the list of the votes on the journals of the Senate and the House of Representatives. The purpose of the joint session having concluded, pursuant to Senate Concurrent Resolution 1, 117th Congress, the chair declares the joint session dissolved.
Joining us now to further speak on the situation in the United States is Nigeria's former ambassador to Lebanon, Hameed Opeloyeru. Good to have you on This Day Live, Ambassador Opeloyeru. Thank you for joining us. Hello, Ambassador.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank
Dr.
you.
Ruben Abati.
Thank you for honoring us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ruben Abati, and thank you for inviting us.
Thank you very much. Well, quickly, I would like to ask you,
Inviting me to this.
what happened on Wednesday, January 6th was very shocking in the United States. It's been described as a day that will live in infamy. It's been described as an attempted coup. It's been described as an insurrection. And the entire world is just simply shocked, considering America's reputation as the seat of democracy, as many Americans claim. What lessons can we learn from what has happened in the United States to see such a strong democracy held to ransom by just a group of Trumpers?
Thank you very much, Dr. Abati. I think, it is correct that what happened in the United States at the Capitol Hill was very shocking to members of the international community, as well as also the American nation at large. I think that is because America has an experience that spans over 240 years in democratic exercise and principles, and everybody thought that such a situation will not happen because democracy is about free and fair election, is about judiciary that is independent, is also about freedoms and civil liberties. And so for them to see that this assault on democracy happened, it was really shocking. And also that it happened also at the prompting of a sitting president is also more shocking. And I think the lessons that we will learn from this is that democracy is not a sprint. It is actually a marathon. I mean, it has to be nurtured constantly, and there is that element of incrementalism. You have to consolidate and nurture democracy. And so therefore all these shocks can happen. So the resilience of the democratic experiment that you have is what matters. Also, there is also a lesson for leadership. Leadership also is very important in addition to institutional building. If we are building institution, you also have to build the software, which is the persons, the politicians, those who are going to operate the system, the civil service, and all this. And of course, if you look at Trump, if you look at President Trump, with all respect, there have been a few issues during the elections, during the campaign, during the electioneering, that portrayed some element of autocracy, some element of what we call in Nigeria, do or die politics. And I think that is actually what happened. But in this case, as lessons for us in the third world, is to understand that we just have to nurture democracy. We have to ensure that whatever we are doing, we consolidate on it. Nigeria, for example, has only 30 years of democratic experiment out of the 60 years that we have, during which we achieved independence. And so therefore, whatever we have now is not completely, is not sacrosanct. It has to be built upon, it has to be developed, it has to be nurtured. And I think that is the lesson we also need to take. And then, of course, the other lesson is that the integrity of the operators, or the integrity of the man in charge of the presidency, and of course also the head of the different institutions like the judiciary, like the legislature, and like the executive. The integrity of these operators is also very important. And so these are things that we will learn, that whatever, how long that you do, just like they say in Nigeria, 20 years staying in Shaki does not make you to learn medicine. So you can actually stay long years in democracy, and then you still have some shocks. And so these are the shocks.
Well, Ambassador, how much damage
seeing now in America?
How much damage will you say that incident, singular incident, has done to American democracy, considering the fact that countries like North Korea, Zimbabwe, China, Turkey are now mocking the United States and saying this is the same United States that claims to be the champion of democracy? I mean, Zimbabweans are even saying America has no moral right anymore to dictate the democratic standards to any other country in the world. That's damage, I guess, at the corporate level. But what of damage also in terms of how the Republican Party came out of all of this, and then particularly the damage to President Trump's legacy? Or you think he doesn't really care?
Yeah, I think really it did tremendous damage to the integrity and to the status of America, to the image of America actually internationally, apart from even those countries that are not considered as allies of America. Even the allies also condemned this particular attack on democracy. And of course, we also had that France and UK also, they reiterated the fact that democracy in America must not be abused, and it must continue to flourish. So therefore, the damage is very considerable, and I believe that the legacy that President Trump will have left behind in terms of the economic achievements has been seriously damaged. And of course, also coupled with all the conspiracy theories about COVID-19 and pulling out of most of the trade institutions and trade agreements in the world. And then we have NAFTA, we have all these agreements America has pulled out. So America, the fact that America tried to isolate itself could also be to the advantage of US, but then America now cannot really retreat from the world scene, and I think that is why possibly the policies of President Trump were a little bit faulty in that regard. So in a nutshell, this situation has done a very considerable damage to the image of America, and I think also the Republican Party may have to go the way of the Whig Party, which in 1848 has to disband. Either they disband, because people actually refer to the Republican Party now as the party of President Trump. And so, but then if we look at the reaction of the Republican senators after the mob incident, the reaction showed that they may have to take the bull by the horns and see that they try to bring back or reclaim their party and see how it will not be dissolved like it happened during the time of President Zachary of 1848. So I believe that the Republican Party also has a great role to play to see how they can salvage the image of their party, what remains of the Republican Party.
Well, what are the implications for democratic reform in the United States? Because even President Trump, when he now finally tried to backtrack and he condemned the attack on the Capitol Hill, even when he was the one that instigated it in the first place. What are the implications for democratic reform to prevent this kind of situation in the future?
Yeah, I think the electoral college system may have to be tinkered with a little bit because this has happened, although one may also argue that there was nothing wrong with the Electoral College itself if the operators are sincere enough. You could recall that President Trump himself did not even want to concede even to Hillary Clinton at that time. There was this idea that Hillary Clinton, when they asked Trump that will you concede if you lose the election, and then he said he couldn't give any answer. So the same thing he did also with Joe Biden. So I believe that this situation is very important, and all situation. In this particular regard, President Trump has to understand that his country is in a very serious situation for reform, and also the Republican Party must ensure that reforms are underway. But of course, also President Biden has promised to see that a lot of things are put together, and luckily for the Democratic Party, they now control all the both houses, and then also the situation is very easy for them to control at this level.
Well, there have been calls for sanctions for bad conduct, and in that regard, many of the lawmakers are calling for the impeachment of President Trump. In fact, Senator Mitt Romney, the senator from Utah, who is also a Republican, is asking for the conviction of President Trump. First, it was the 25th Amendment that was being proposed, but now we understand that the House, led by the House Democrats, are going to present articles of impeachment tomorrow. Do you think that the president should be impeached, or you think he should just be allowed to get away with what he has done?
Yeah, well, I think it's wise enough, really, to keep all the options open because nobody knows what surprises also Trump may pull within the few days. Nobody expected what happened at the Capitol Hill, and then so if other surprises come, they should have a ready-made response. And so the response, the option of article of the 25th Amendment, and of course the option also of getting the Congress to continue with the draft articles of impeachment. These are options that are really very important. And of course, it looks like even post-Trump, there is need also to see how the sanctions in one form or another can be imposed, because otherwise anybody can come in future and try the adventure that President Trump actually pulled up. And so therefore, if it is possible, and I understand that even the impeachment process can still continue after the handover of President Trump. And anyway, whether this continued or not, we also know that there are other issues like some fiscal misdemeanor that will also be visited on President Trump after leaving office. So I think left or right, it looks like President Trump may not evade sanctions in one form or another.
Well, Ambassador Opeloyeru, people have read a racial tone into how the security was handled at Capitol Hill. We have been told that if this was Black Lives Matter protesters, more persons will have been arrested, more persons will probably have been gunned down, but that for racial reasons, the Capitol Hill police just dropped the ball. And Nancy Pelosi was so incensed that she has asked for the resignation of the chief of police for Capitol Hill. The sergeant at arms has also been asked to resign. Do you share the view that there is also racism involved in this, and that the ultra-right supporting President Trump is behind this?
Yeah, I think that is possibly the more you are right, because that is the more reason why there should be some investigations, because in fact there are also talks about possibility of President Trump at one point. He considered a possibility of using the National Guard to actually protect those bandits that went to Capitol Hill. So apparently it will have just been a complete coup. So in this case, I think further investigation should go ahead, and more so also that President Trump did not consider any form of lowering the flag or any form of trying to speak to the death of the operators at the Capitol Hill, and I mean the victims. There was nothing like any mourning or any declaration of some official remorse or official mourning for these victims. So in this particular way, it shows really clearly that the president does not even think that he has committed any infraction in this particular, in the whole issue. So I believe that the legal firmament or the legal framework should be extended, and then should also be extended to include, to see how they can investigate this particular issue. And of course, the racial tone also is very clear, because everybody knew that one of the traits of President Trump was racial. I mean, all the racial societies in the U.S. and of course the immigration policies of President Trump. They were all geared towards supporting the ultra-right white extremists. And so therefore, this issue of racial discrimination, it's very potent in the policies of President Trump.
Well, Ambassador Opeloyeru, President Trump has made it clear that he will not be attending President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration on January 20. Is that something anybody should worry about? What difference does it make?
Well, I think it's something like good riddance, as the president-elect said, but then it's also very, very instructive that the Vice President Pence has agreed to attend, and so therefore the President Trump himself is trying to also show to the world that he is a very bad loser. And then he wanted the whole house to crumble on him. That well, if I cannot have it, nobody should have it. And then so this is like a deluge. After me, it is a deluge. And so in that wise, I believe that the President-elect Biden had originally welcomed his presence at the inauguration. But then when he turned down this, when he changed his mind, the president also said, well, this was a good riddance. But I believe that actually, as a statesman, which he is not anyway, he should have attended, actually. But then he said it before, that he would never concede to anybody. And so therefore, such a personality in politics, I think America or any other country should watch out for those traits of leadership, traits of statesmanship are very important in politics, and also very important in nurturing democracy in the modern world. So in this case, I think President Trump will have actually, he has alienated himself from people who may even have sympathy for him, and even some of the protesters also are already beginning to understand, to indicate some remorse in what they have done. So therefore, President Trump is completely isolated, and I think that isolation must be traceable to the President Trump's making himself. And so I believe it's a psychological issue, and he does not even want to see anybody. He's not been talking terms with his deputy, vice president. And so, therefore, I think he's just on his own. Is OYO, as we say in Nigeria.
Well, quickly, Ambassador Opeloyeru, we have just 2 minutes to go. What would be your advice to President Biden in terms of his priorities going forward as he assumes office?
Yeah, I think, of course, you know that the Democratic Party has a very welfarist principle, welfarist economic policies, and beyond that, he has also said that COVID-19 will be his priority, because his predecessor, that is President Trump, had completely faulted the entire processes of COVID-19, and then, of course, also. President Biden must have to build bridges within the international scene. At least I'm talking about all the trade agreements must come back, and the U.S. must now assume its role as a defender of democracy, and also should assume its role as the largest economy in the world. And of course, try to see how they can also, of course, they have talked about the issue of nuclear proliferation, and the issue of seeing that all those areas that President Trump had really this thing should be. So I believe that this is the lesson that we should take from the hope. And so Nigeria also should also embrace President Biden and see how they can continue the Obama policies that prevailed, and the relationship that prevailed between Nigeria and USA.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Hameed Opeloyeru, for joining us on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. Thank you very much indeed.